This is the Miller philosopher. A commenter in one of my videos mentioned that when it came to unforgivable sins, that the kin-slayings that Maedhros had taken part in were either that or very close to it. After all, Silmarillion does say that the reason why the Silmaril that Maedhros had rejected him because he had too much elf blood on his hands. So this got me thinking, why are the elves being held accountable for same-species violence and everyone else seems to get away with it? I mean, humans have the whole kinslaying trend on the lockdown. Just look at the Third Age, for example. Why are the Valar and Uru getting all up in arms and laying down curses left and fucking right when the elves do this, but humans can quite literally do this all day? I think another commenter somewhat hit the nail on the head when he said that there was a perception that the elves were just somehow supposed to know better. That because they were the firstborn and being more harmonious and in tune with the spirit, body, and the world around them, that they would just have the elven common sense, as it were, not to go around killing each other. I can kind of see this, since half the elves were raised in Valinor in the first place, and so were taught that common sense by the Valar. Meanwhile, the elves of Middle-earth seemed spread out enough that any incident that might provoke them to start killing each other was at the very least minimal. Maybe the only exception I can think of among them might have been the Green Elves of Osirian during the First Age, who had openly threatened the Edain with violence if they didn't stay clear of their territory. Granted, this was directed at humans, but I wonder if they had been elves, if they would have been just as incensed to threaten them. Another factor is the presence of the Valar in Middle-earth, which was much more active during the First Age. The first incident of elf and elf violence, after all, happens in their territory, and, given that Valinor is holy ground, if you pardon the Highlander reference, I could see why they would become incensed enough to curse someone for committing such an act. Or, at the very least, that they would have become aware of a precedent now being set among the elves. I mean, even Turgon, you could argue, is just as guilty of kinslaying as the rest of the Noldor, since he executed Eöl by casting him off the walls of Gondolin much later than Alqualande. Even though there's no record of any punishment or consideration for this from the Valar or anybody else, just the fact that he and Eöl too had thought about and acted on killing another elf still did so. So again, you have a precedent here for elves killing other elves for particular reasons. Yet, by the latter end of the next age, when the Númenóreans were having conflicts with some of the natives of Middle-earth and taking sacrificial slaves back to their island, kinslaying isn't mentioned among the sins they're committing. Though you could argue that it was implied given how pissed the Valar were getting, and which also resulted in the reneging of their blessings upon Númenor. And by the Third Age, the Valar are gone, with maybe the exception of Umo. I don't know. Either way, they were no longer on that plane of existence as a whole. So you could argue that there was just no one there to enact any kind of judgment of kinslaying anyway by that time. It's odd, and I've never seen any kind of record mentioned of why there was such an exception made for the elves when it came to killing each other, and humans, like I said before, could still do so with impunity. But what do you guys think? Were the high elves just a special case? Were mortals given an extra grace, or just assumed they didn't know any better anyway, that no one bothered to curse them too? Let me know in the comments below. But this is the Middle-earth philosopher. You guys have a good day.